My name is Michael Hogan, and I'm with Mo Clean Skies. That's the logo over there. And we are basically, we have legislation that went in we had a House bill, two House bills, and uh, oh, I lost myself there. All right, so we had two bills in the House and one in the Senate this year. I want to say last year, but it's this year, obviously.
Right.
And that's to ban geoengineering and weather modification in the state of Missouri. And so I started doing this like in April of last year. So I'd never even been to Jeff City. Certainly never been to the capital of any state. Well, just as a tourist is all. But I got involved in this because, I couldn't take it anymore. I just was thinking, somebody's got to do something about this. And honestly, it was the streaks in the sky that got me really upset. Turns out I've learned a lot since then and learned where the source of those trails are. And, it matters, and we can go into that if you want. But basically,
Yeah.
that's what I started doing. I almost immediately I had bills in the House and the Senate. I'm just, I'm a believer. I know God's pushing me in this, and He's called me into such a time as this. And so I give Him the credit, but I'm just a person that doesn't need to do extra stuff. I'm a busy person. I was plenty happy before I did all this, but I'm not a halfway person either. So if I'm going to if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it all the way. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. I remember, I think it was on the Rob Carter show I was watching. I don't know if that was you on there, if it was somebody else from the association talking about the streaks in the sky and excess sulfur content, something to that effect.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I started to basically write legislation or co-write legislation, I think the original assumption by pretty much most everybody is that, it's chemtrails conspiracy, right? It's not this is a conspiracy, but it's, something where nefarious planes are flying above our head and spraying toxins out of nozzles, pumps and pipes and things like that. And that's what we see. And as I even had legislation to ban it. And here's the deal. There really truly is a thing called geoengineering. And there really and truly is a thing called weather modification. And that didn't change when I found out, when I did my own research. But so basically, there really and truly are globalists who want to spray those toxins into our atmosphere to basically dim the sun, to mitigate climate change. That's a fact. Nobody can argue with that because I can bring that into a court of law and I can prove it all day long. So don't nobody, that's my Southern talk. Don't nobody come to me and tell me that that's not true, because I can bring the evidence all day long and you won't win that, because even Lee Zeldin came out and said it's true. And he's the head of the EPA. And he even says that it has a history of government funding. We can bring you the Biden plan, all this stuff. That's a fact. It's in, there's a startup company recently that is an Israeli-American company called Stardust Solutions that is planning to go ahead and start doing that. Okay. And so that's a fact. They want to spray toxins into our stratosphere to block the sun, to mitigate climate change, to lower our temperature, because they think that if they're not in charge of that, then we're all doomed, right? That's just the climate change cabal, right? Their agenda to try and control all of us and that sort of thing. That's a fact. We want to ban that in the state of Missouri because we live in Missouri. I'm not satisfied with just Missouri. I'm going on to other states and even other countries, okay? Because the people are asking me. And right after this, I'll be on a show in Canada, okay? Everybody wants their air clean. We don't need to be breathing in extra toxins. We already have enough, and we don't need to eat food that's toxic, and we don't need to drink water that's toxic. So this is a major problem that we're going to have to address, okay? And we want all 50 states to ban it here in the States, and we want other countries to ban it. We want to go to the federal government too and get them to ban it. So that's for sure. The other thing is that we know cloud seeding is real. again, I can actually bring even more evidence on that because that goes all the way back to the 40s and probably even before that. But even, as long as we've been flying planes and as long as military's been able to basically turn things into warfare, like weather warfare, use cloud seeding as warfare. They did it in Vietnam. It is a fact. In Operation Popeye was used to basically create a monsoon season or to extend the monsoon season on the Ho Chi Minh Trail to make it harder for the enemy to move and maneuver and things like that. The problem is that it rained on our people too, our guys. They suffered. And I was on with Rep Bryant Wolfen a couple of days ago. He's going to be on my show on the Saturday, and he thought it was funny because I actually mentioned Forrest Gump in the committee hearing when I was testifying. I didn't mean to, but I couldn't help myself because that's when, if you see in the movie, what did he say? It started to rain, right? He started to rain, and it rained up and rained and it rained and it rained sideways and upways and every which way. Well, guess what? That was because our government was seeding those clouds.
Yeah.
And it absolutely did have an effect. And that's why. So those are things that are real, and we want to ban those. Now, it turns out the trails that we actually physically see are not either of those things. So people are getting confused, and the reason they're getting confused because they're being misled by people. There's a lot of talking heads out there that mislead people, and they profit off of it. And so I'm coming in saying, look, I thought that too. Turns out I'm going to follow the evidence. If I have to go and testify before the government and even in court of law, I better have the truth and not just a bunch of theories and a bunch of, hearsay. So I'm going to come in with the goods. And what I know for a fact is that every trail we see with our eyes that seems to be covering the sky and blocking the sun, those are coming from every plane that flies across our sky. Like majority of them, are going to be commercial planes. Every single, I tested 100 of them. 100 of them were commercial planes. So what's the deal? Are they spraying us with toxins intentionally? Are they spraying out of pumps and pipes? The answer is that's absurd if you say they are. And people do say that. They're adding the pumps and pipes and they've got the tanks, and it's just baloney. They don't need to do that because their fuels are laced with all the same particulates that the globalists want to spray in the stratosphere are already in the fuels. They've been that way for a long time, and it's getting worse. And that's why we're suing the EPA. Okay. Because I don't have time to be messing around. I want this thing's fixed. And so we're literally going after the sources. And we are in contact with some high level people as of this week. I won't mention names because I don't want to get myself into trouble, but we are, again, it's just, I want something done. I don't want to, not trying to do this for my own. I'm spending more time than I should. I don't make money off of this. I spend money on this. So I want to get it done as quickly as I can. And for the people, for our future, all these things. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take up so much time, but I have to explain all this to people.
Oh no, that's what I have you on for, is to kind of clear the air, because I was one of the majority who assumed that the trails that were in the sky is what was modifying the weather.
Well, let me say this: it is modifying the weather. That's the thing, because you can't spray sulfur dioxide or sulfuric acid out, even if it's out of emissions. It does modify our weather. And I believe that the EPA and the FAA are doing and allowing this on purpose for the same reason that globalists want to spray the same stuff in the sky. So, and the reason why I say that is because every part of our government and every government in the world has climate change mitigation policy. Even though we have a Trump as in the administration, we have Lee Zeldin's against all that, he says. But they're still there. It's called deep state. Okay.
Right.
Stuff you can't get rid of easily. Do you think that we have DEI still like secretly going on in the government? Of course we do. And this stuff's been going on a lot longer than DEI. And so this climate change agenda, they're kind of hiding a little bit until they think they're going to take, when when they take over the White House again, at some point they will. Just the way this, hopefully, I mean, God forbid they do, but it is what it is, right? So soon as another Biden comes in, we have another Biden administration, God forbid, they reverse everything. All the EPA regulations, all this stuff, and they come back with their climate change agenda again. Okay. And so this climate change agenda has been going on for decades, long before we were born, and it's getting worse and worse. And so I think that that's why they allow all this stuff in the fuels of every commercial plane that flies across our sky, because it is dimming our sun. It is spreading across our sky. So it's the same thing. My thing is, I want everyone to understand who the sources, what sources are who, because if we keep pointing at the boogeyman and saying, all right, that plane that's spraying me right now, he's spraying me. He just spraying me. And I'm so mad. And you look it up and it's a Delta plane.
Right.
So is that Delta plane? So that Delta plane, think about it. A Delta pilot, he got in his plane, he got dressed that morning and he got a memo and he said, turn the nozzle on as you're flying across, Southwest Missouri, so that you can, dim the sun. Is that really his job? You think that's really what he's doing? There's people that say yes.
But I don't know if that would be able to be secret for that long.
Yeah, I mean, give me a break. I mean, that's why we can't play anywhere with things, because there's so many dumb conspiracy theories that have gone too far, right? I consider myself a conspiracy theorist in some ways because a lot of these things come true, but I want the truth. I don't want bogus stuff. I don't want lies either. So, but is he aware that he's creating these? See, he thinks it's just contrails, just water vapor. That's the other side that says it's a harmless water vapor, but it's not harmless, because we know for a fact that sulfur dioxide turns into sulfuric acid and it rains down on our crops and our soil, and it brings forth aluminum in our soil, things like that. But not only sulfuric acid, but it's also all the aluminum, the barium, the strontium, all the metals coming out of the engine, just by wear and tear of the engine, things like that, lubricants from the engine, things that the FAA has been getting away with for all these years because the EPA has allowed them to. Okay, so the EPA had the Clean Air Act, only addressed, carbon dioxide, because that's what they say, our carbon footprint. That's where we're going to focus on carbon this, carbon that. But they make an endangerment finding of carbon, right? In the EPA. And so what Lee Zeldin's reversing that. But what we're telling him is, don't just stop there. You have to go after the non-carbon pollutants that are coming out of commercial aviation. Because what's happening is these particulates that are flowing, spreading out of these emissions, the backs of these engines, it is just absolutely pouring out. It is accumulating in our atmosphere. And at the moment that that plane flies through a nice supersaturated region, this is why you see them sometimes and sometimes you don't. When they are flying through, the only time you see them is when there is condensation present. When it does go through ice supersaturated regions where they're flying through a pocket of very moist, like, it's relative humidity, right, at 30,000 feet. It would be probably around, 90 to 100% relative humidity at 30,000 feet. Doesn't matter how humid it is on the ground. So don't you're listening to the meteorologist says it's only 20% humidity. And you're thinking, well, that's not enough, but it's 30,000 feet. It's very different up there than it is down here. And then also, it's also very cold in the atmosphere, in the troposphere at 30,000 feet. It could be like negative 50 degrees Celsius at that area. So if it's ice, super saturated regions, that's when these particulates turn into clouds. Because it won't become a vapor unless there's a particulate that it can grab onto. So when the pollution, these nanoparticulates of sulfur dioxide, metals raining out of the emissions, the water droplet condensates onto that particulate. That's the way it works. That's the physics of it. Otherwise, you would never see a cloud. Clouds are full of particulates, right?
Right.
And so that's what's causing the planes, the commercial planes, to make trails in the sky and cover our sun. And so what we're doing is saying, you got to stop this. You got to clean all that up. And then we're also telling them that you have to avoid the ice supersaturated regions, which they can do. You can go up 1,000 feet or go down 1,000 feet, or you can take a left turn or take a right turn and literally go around what you know, just like turbulence, right? They can avoid the supersaturated regions and avoid making the trails. So that's a lot of information right there. But does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So they've actually seen over a period of time the metals, like the increase in metals through the crops and our water and food from these emissions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, are they going to admit that they're from emissions of planes? No, because nobody's looking at it, right? Because no one thinks that that's where it's coming from. And so, but what sulfuric acid does is when it's a natural process. So sulfur dioxide, when it is released into the atmosphere, it becomes sulfuric acid, right? And when sulfuric acid hits the ground, it actually brings forth the natural aluminum in the soil. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but I'm becoming one. Sound like maybe, but and then also there are these metals coming out right out of the jets, and think about how much commercial aviation, 100,000 flights per day.
Yeah.
You pull up a flight tracker. What does it look like? It looks ridiculous. The traffic that we see in the sky is, especially in the upper, in the northern part of the hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere is not so much, but in the northern hemisphere, all this pollution coming out of these jets, worldwide, not just America, is what we have to deal with. If you ever want to stop seeing the trails in the sky, that's what you have to go after. And so we're doing it. We're doing all the above. We're going after the intentional spraying, which is people who want to spray, but they spray in the stratosphere, which is, miles and miles in the sky, which you can't see them. They're not, you're not going to see a plane spraying up there. And because conditions aren't right, it's much warmer up there, but you can't see them. It's too far. Okay. It's called stratospheric aerosol injection for a reason. The commercial aviation fly in the troposphere. That's about 30,000 feet. It depends on where you're located, but those are the planes you're seeing. Okay. And we also want to stop. So we want to stop all these things, and we go after every single piece. That's why we're called clean skies. And no matter what's going on up there, we want it to be clean.
Yeah. So you guys had two bills, right, that you had in the House this past session, correct?
Yeah.
And
they were identical.
They were identical?
Yeah, they were just carried from two different reps.
Okay. What was that like? Did you have to go to a series of different reps to try and get somebody to listen to you, or did you get pretty lucky with that?
Yeah, I went straight to the source from people who already had bills in the past. So it was so easy. I was new. I'd never done anything like this. All I had to do was make a call. And the first person I talked to, I did go through a few other people first. And then they said, hey, this person had a bill last year. So the first person I called that I really talked to about it was Representative Steve Jordan. And he had a bill that he basically took Tennessee's bill and just carbon copied it, because Tennessee did pass their bill. So we have 3 states that passed laws that says, that bans geoengineering and weather modification in their states. And so he took Tennessee's bill and it went nowhere, right? So he's like, yeah, if you can help me, that would be great. So I basically, we rewrote it. I co-authored. We had, quite a bit of good help from outside Missouri, from people who are really good at that sort of thing and have been doing this across the country. And so we came up with a pretty good bill. And then Burt Whaley happens to be my state rep. And so he took it and carbon copied that. And he helped us quite a bit to get it to committee. And then also Mike Moon in the Senate, he also had bills in the past that went nowhere. And he even tried to get it into the Freedom to Farm Act. He kind of snuck it in there to see if he could, could pass it that way, and got nowhere. But we actually, we went to committee and we passed, it was a unanimous vote in the committee in the Senate too.
And so it didn't get stalled at all? Is it still in discussion?
Yeah, they got stalled.
It got stalled.
So obviously ran out of time. So
right.
We actually went to committee in the Senate in February, and they didn't actually vote on it for months later. And that was a stall tactic, I think, from the committee chair, because he didn't really feel comfortable with it. He didn't want to say no because the people are really rising up against this. And he didn't want to be on the hook for that because I have quite a few followers and I'll call them out.
Yeah.
I have called people out.
Well, if you follow the money too, on like the ethics commission, I'm curious to see what kind of donations they received during their campaign.
Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't see that. I mean, I look into that stuff and I don't think that was the issue. I think the issue is that this is new to them. Honestly, I thought maybe cloud seeding would be an issue because this was the agriculture committee that we were in the Senate, and agriculture likes cloud seeding.
Right.
A lot of people do there because it gives them the ability to hire someone to spray a cloud to make it rain on your crop. But the problem is it's toxic rain. It's
yeah.
But I didn't see any of that. In fact, the Farm Bureau came out to endorse what we had too. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I was reading because I find it funny you brought up Operation Popeye. I did a deep dive into that a while back, and then I was reading on Operation LAC, LAC. I don't know if you've heard about that or read about that at all.
No.
And it was a test by the Army, and they wanted to see how far bioweapons could spread. And they used sulfur as a test, and they were intentionally dumping it. And they chose Missouri as one of the main targets.
Yeah.
And they flew over St. Louis, over impoverished.
Oh yeah, I testified. I didn't put two and two together. I actually testified on that in our House committee. I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish that.
Oh, I found it crazy. Even now, some people think it's a conspiracy theory in general. But if you actually, like you said earlier, if you look at the history, for people to say, "Oh, our government wouldn't do that," yeah, they would.
Yeah, they do. They have. In the past, it's fact. It's not even, that's why I can say I can walk into a courtroom and prove this, because it's all there, and people's, the day and age we're living in, you could take people and open their eyes with toothpicks and say, look, and if they already have their mind made up, they're not going to believe anything they see, even if it's proof and facts, but I testified and I said, there's a part in the hearing that I say, you don't think our government will do this? How about what they did in St. Louis? How about spraying, toxins over a community that where they tested to see if this radiation what it would do to these people. And, these poor people came out and, have recently come out in the media, and, many of their friends passed away from cancers, and it's just a horrible, horrible story. Just absolutely horrific. You think that stopped in the 50s?
No. They just refurbish it, rename it, and keep going.
Yeah. And the technology is so much greater, and they're doing things like that. I mean, we've been weaponizing weather for a long time, and we're still doing it in other countries, right?
Right. So the root cause, it's not really like you said, the pilot, it's not like a mass conspiracy. It's more of like the fuel mixture, and a lot of the pilots and people who fuel the planes and everything, they're totally unaware. It's all just in the chemistry of it.
Well, don't forget, we have two different things we're talking about. Okay. We're talking about there are planes that are designed for spraying. Okay. They truly are. That's one thing. And so that's a whole different perspective, right? Where they do know what they're doing. They do have switches. They do turn on nozzles. They do spray. But they're in those particular cases, you're not going to see them. They're not going to be, they don't need Ken Caldera and Dr. David Keith. They're the leading scientists behind the stratospheric aerosol injection, the geoengineering. They say you only need about 14 planes to spray the entire country, the entire world. Okay. You're not going to, they don't need, but what the reason is because commercial airplanes are doing the same thing every day, all day long. And so that's what we're seeing is the pilot and, involved in that. No, they're just flying from A to B. And it
Right.
isn't in it. So there are the intentional things, and there, when they do spray out of, the military sprayed over the St. Louis community in the 50s. It wasn't just planes; it was spraying from rooftops and things like that.
Yeah.
That's an very intentional person that's doing it, knowing exactly what they're doing. And then there are the other side of the coin is the trails that we see in the sky. That's not that. It's not the same thing.
Right.
But it does have a lot of the same effects as far as, is it changing our weather? Is all this pollution that's coming out of these commercial airlines, is that changing our weather? Yes. Does it dim the sun? Yes. So it's, here's an example. Dr. David Keith, the country of Mexico banned geoengineering stratospheric aerosol injections from an entire country. Okay. And this was a few years ago. Dr. David Keith laughed, and he commented, I can quote him. I'm not giving the exact quote, but he said, You can't do that. You can't ban the release of sulfur dioxide in the sky because it's coming out of every commercial airline every single day out of their emissions already anyway. So in other words, we're doing this already just by allowing just through the aviation industry, because they already have it in their fuel. So that's taking place. All we're going to do is add, when he says we're going to do stratospheric aerosol injection, to going up high in the stratosphere and spraying 100 million more, I think it's tons, 100 million tons. It's 1 million tons of sulfuric acid in addition to what we already have that's coming out of the commercial air. So he wants to add more. And here's the whole point. Okay. Where does this come from? It comes from mad scientists who studied the volcanic eruption that happened in the Philippines in the 1990s, Mount Pinatubo. When that happened, they studied what it did to the temperature in the climate. Never mind the fact that it's completely a environmental travesty, that when that happens, it is absolutely, everybody knows this. When a volcano erupts, that's bad on the environment, right? It destroys the ozone. It does more damage to the environment than any human-made pollution could ever do. Okay. In one volcanic eruption. And how many active volcanoes do we have right now? Okay. It's just part of nature. We can't stop that. But what they see is they go, oh, we found out that basically the sulfuric acid that came out of that volcano, it lowered the temperature by, 1 point, like whatever it was, 1 degree Celsius. And they saw that we should do that more. That's good. That's the answer. We should mimic what the volcanic eruption did by spraying, sulfuric acid in the sky and adding into the stratosphere. So that's I'm not making it up. It is a fact. It's available for everyone to see. And so that's the stupid ideas that these morons have. And, there's other scientists that say that's terrible. That's a horrible idea, but they do it. They're doing it anyway. They're going to go ahead and do it. It's because we don't have laws to say, they're going to protect us from this. So that's why we're saying, okay, we're going to start in Missouri and we're going to get that done. And we're also going to the federal government. Like I said earlier, we are pursuing the EPA, and we've given them a certain amount of time by law. And if they don't respond, or if they don't give us what we want, we will take them to court, and we will bring this evidence that expose this issue with the commercial aviation industry, that they are doing the same thing out of commercial aviation every day, all day long, and they have to address it. And if they don't, we'll see.
Yeah. So how would that look for Missouri alone? Like, let's say Missouri, we enforce it, but all the states around us don't enforce it.
Mm-hmm.
How well does that work for, like, let's say our aerospace, whenever aircraft fly through?
Yeah, it's not going to be enough if it's just us. So
Right.
we really do need, that's why I say I'm not stopping with Missouri. I'm helping other states, and I'm helping other countries too. We all have to do this. And it's just like eating an elephant one bite at a time. It's the states are supposed to have, they can have, here's the deal. If the federal government's involved in some of this stuff, which we know they are, if a state has nothing on the books that says you can't do this, then by default, you get whatever the policy is at the federal level. So that's one reason that we say, well, we got to have something. And that's kind of the thing that I go into committee hearings talking to legislators about. Like, we don't have anything to protect ourselves, to say the federal government can't just come and do whatever they want. Let's just take that example that you mentioned in the 50s, what they did in St. Louis. We should say that's illegal. Isn't it crazy that we have to say that you can't come into our state and do that?
Yeah.
And if you do, I don't know the solution there. What's the solution? But if the state has nothing, if Missouri said that's illegal, I mean, I don't know, is that going to stop the federal government? But the federal government probably would go to another state and try another state that doesn't have any legislation on that, right? That's kind of what I'm thinking there. But so yeah, we have to get. I'm trying to get some help in Arkansas. They're the ones that there's 37 states have legislation on the books somewhere, like some kind of, they've tried to pass this type of. So it's not like we're not getting anywhere. Right. So we've got 3 that have actually passed the laws, and we're trying to get more and more and more. It's just one grueling fight at a time, but also going to the federal government.
Yeah. So what can just everyday people do, like myself or yourself, to help you guys out? Like, what can be done?
Yeah. So I think just started our website, mocleanskies.org, and that you can pretty much find a lot of information there of how you can help. I co-formed another organization called the American Clean Air Coalition. And there's a lot of very high profile people on that commission. It's just a handful of organizations, but we're the ones that are taking the government to court, okay, at the federal level. But and we have some pretty high level contacts. Just this week, if I told you the name, you would know right away. And you probably guess it, but I'm not going to say it because I told them I wouldn't. But this is pretty important, and we need this to be exposed. The public doesn't get this. They don't understand that it's not just it's not just planes that are spraying. You probably have never actually witnessed a plane spraying out of their plane. You just probably haven't ever seen that. But people think when they see a plane that's leaving this long trail, they think that's spraying out of nozzles, that the pilot is up. And I thought the same thing. And then I simply got a flight tracker, and I said, I'm going to find out who that is. I want to find out, where they're coming, where they left. I might even show up at the airport, right? And turns out it was a Delta plane or Southwest Airlines plane. I'm like, what? And then 100 of them, I did 100, and all 100 of them were commercial airlines. Now, if there happened to be a military plane, because I'm not really close to a military installation, so I don't get a lot of military planes that go. any plane that's flying in that altitude, when the conditions are right. In fact, military planes have a lot more particulates that coming out of there. They have a high level of aluminum, like 9,000 parts per million of aluminum content in their fuels, because it's JP8 fuel, and it has to have, they burn much more efficiently and hotter. And so you're going to even see it more probably from a military plane. But any plane that's flying, any jet that's flying at the altitude that's flying through these supersaturated regions, they're going to show this long trail on certain days, right? We've had several days of no trails, and I can look up the conditions and tell you why. I can even tell you when you're going to see them and where. I can go, okay, where are you at? And I can say, no, I'm not asking you right now, but I'm saying, let's say somebody is in Seattle, Washington, or, Cleveland, Ohio. If you tell me where you are, give me your coordinates, and I'll tell you whether you're seeing them right now, whether you're seeing any trails or not. And I can tell you if you're probably going to see them tomorrow or not. How can I predict that? It's because conditions do matter, and condensation, partial part of it is the condensation, but it's also without these particulates that are raining out of the emissions. That's what we're trying to address, to try to make sure that without the particulate matter, they're not going to make clouds. And what they call that is aviation-induced cloudiness. So,
yeah, whenever they do training exercises out at Whiteman Air Force Base, I live in the general area of that, where they do training along the river with those jets.
yeah,
they get to putting out some clouds.
yeah, and it's you see it from the wingtips too, right?
Yeah.
And that's a natural process. That really is condensation coming off the wingtips. Okay, that doesn't mean that those jets have spray nozzles on their tips, on the tips of their planes, and they push the button to spray toxins. No, the toxins coming out of those jets it would make you sick. I mean, like I said, in aluminum content, JP8 fuel, that's what that is for military planes. JP8 fuel, it has 8 or 9,000 parts per million in aluminum content. Okay. So if you're close to that, you're getting a lot of aluminum in your sky. The more the military planes fly over, the more aluminum that's raining down on your sky. A lot of it. So it'd be interesting to see what the effects are from people that live near airports like that, military airports, what the dimension or dementia levels, how
right.
Interesting to see in the future if somebody could do a study like that. Because aluminum is obviously believed to be the leading cause of Alzheimer's and dementia. And both my parents died from Alzheimer's, so I know what I'm talking about as far as, I'm interested in finding out what's the cause of it. And it's always been aluminum content is not good for the brain. It does go through the blood-brain barrier. Most dementia patients have aluminum in their blood, high levels. So yeah, just go to our website, go there. It'll take you to lots of different things that you can do to get involved, including a petition that you can sign. We're asking for the people to get involved we have 2 petitions, one at the state level here in Missouri to help us with our fight at the state level. I think we're probably up to 15,000 signatures. And I bring that in with me and I say, hey, there's 15,000 signatures of Missourians saying they want you to do something. And we'd like it to be 100,000, but we'll get there. But the other petition is for what we're doing at the federal level with the EPA, where we're basically taking the EPA to court and saying, we need you to address this. And if you don't, we're going to take you to court. And that's our right. We're not trying to make threats. It's just our rights as American citizens we follow the law. And there's a certain process when you take something like that to the federal government, you have to petition them and give them a chance to respond. Because if you go to court without that, the judge will just throw it out saying, well, you have to follow a process, right? You have to give them a chance to respond. And there's a process and there is a rule And so the rule is that we give them 180 days, which is 6 months. It's a long time, but the government doesn't do anything overnight. So that's another petition you can get involved with. Certainly if we don't ask for money, but if you just feel compelled to help, it does cost me money to go. It's 6-7 hour round trip to go to Jeff City for me. And, I had to be there a lot this year, and I'll be there again next year, so yeah, it helps because if I don't have to pay out of my pocket for the fuel and that sort of thing. Gas is a little expensive today. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, just a little bit.
And I drive a diesel. Oh, here's another thing. I just brought up diesel, right? Here's sulfur in diesel. Have you noticed that? Do you drive a diesel?
No, it's too rich for my blood.
Well, if you ever filled up with diesel, you can go to the pump. Just go over that green pump and look. See if it said, not all of them do, but some of them will say that there's the EPA regulation for that diesel fuel is 15 parts per million. So in other words, how it says ultra low sulfur diesel. That's what you see on some pumps as well. Now, where did that come from? That came from the EPA that said that we don't want diesel trucks or tractors flooding our environment with sulfur. Ooh, that's why. Oh, I'm for that. I think because it's not good, sulfuric acid. But then they let the aviation industry have over 3,000 parts per million in their fuel. Why is this? Doesn't the airline industry pollute our sky more than diesel trucks?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, look at Taylor Swift. I like to know how much sulfur she's put into the atmosphere.
Yeah. So all these globalists, these people who are just hypocrites, right? They fly their Lear jets to the World Economic Forum and they talk like they're, like weird peasants, and they're the ones polluting the sky, right? Even these environmentalists that say they want to spray our stratosphere with these pollutants. Wait a minute, like time out. Aren't you the environmentalist that says you want to reduce all this stuff?
Right.
No, but they want to spray more toxins into the environment. So yeah. So just go to mocleanskies.org and check out what we have there. And we have all kinds of stuff there for educational purposes and then how you can get involved.
Well, I appreciate it. If there's anything else you'd like to add, I know we're kind of going over your 30-minute block.
Yeah.
So.
No worries. I have a couple other shows that I'm about to go on to, but really appreciate, what you do. You're getting started. Just hang in there, man. You're young and you're going to have your own show one day. You're going to be on the Real Talk Radio Network. Okay. And watch. If you stay with what you're doing, because we need young. How old are you?
I'm 28.
28. So we need young people like you who are just not going to, just let things happen on your watch, because we need the young people, and we are seeing this, right? We are seeing, and if the more younger people we have in politics, the better, because we need you. You're the future. I believe the children are the future.
Well, I appreciate
I'm going to sing that song now. All right, buddy. Well, I appreciate you having me on, and good luck to you. Let me know if I can help you in any way.
Yeah, you as well.
All right. Have a good one. Send me the video too.
Oh, for sure.
Or the link. Okay. Have a good one.